Hi, Dickens Reads families. It is Wednesday and time for book club. And this week we are going to finish reading So Tall Within, Sojourner Truth's Long Walk Towards Freedom by Gary D. Schmidt and illustrated by Daniel Mentor. So last week we met Isabella, who was born a slave, but she walked away from the plantation that she lived on and her slave masters, and she found a new family, a couple who decided to buy her freedom. So where we left off, she was no longer a slave. And this is the couple who bought her. So let's see what happens. But in slavery time, broken promises were like leaves on a tree. Mr. Dumont sold Isabella's 5-year-old son, Peter, to Mr. Getney, who sent him down south. Though Isabella could not read or write, she knew that in New York, where they lived, no slave could be sold outside of the state's borders. Isabella, on foot and alone, went to the Dumont house and knocked on the door hard, and when it opened, she said, "I'll have my child." Mrs. Dumont shook her head. "A fine fuss to make," she said, and closed the door. So Isabella walked to the Getney house and knocked on the door. "I must have my child." Mrs. Getney told her that Peter had gone to live with her married daughter to have enough of everything and be treated like a gentleman. But Isabella knew that this was a lie. "My boy was gone as a slave, and he is too little to go so far away from his mother," she said. Mrs. Getney closed the door. But Isabella thought, "I felt so tall within. I felt as if the power of a nation was with me." Isabella traveled miles and miles across New York to Kingston to tell her story to a grand jury. They saw how tall she was. They gave her a letter for the sheriff, demanding that Peter be brought home. She took the letter and walked miles and miles back. Peter was already far away in Alabama, but Mr. Getney read the letter and knew he must obey the court. He went down south to find Peter while Isabella waited and prayed. "God, help me get my son. If you were in trouble as I am, and I could help you as you can me, I think I wouldn't do it." After a few months, Isabella held Peter again, but the Alabama masters had whipped Peter and kicked him and beaten him. He would never really heal. That was slavery. In slavery time, when chains tore families apart like the wind frays a flag, Isabella still looked up at those stars and that moon and hoped her brothers and sisters saw them too. They did. A year after Peter was freed, he and Isabella moved to New York City, where she met a woman named Nancy at Zion's church. But when they held hands, Isabella said the bony hardness was so just like mine. But Nancy passed away. Soon after, she met her sister Sophia and then her brother Michael, who had been stolen from her long ago. They told her they had another sister in the city, but she had just died. Her name had been Nancy. Then Isabella understood that one of the first people she had met in New York City was her own sister, but she had not known it. What is this slavery, wondered Isabella, that it can do such dreadful things? Perhaps that was the moment Isabella knew she had a journey to make under those stars and that moon. It would be a journey, a sojourn to tell the truth about slavery. And maybe then slavery would end forever. More than 15 years after she walked away from the Dumonts, Isabella changed her name to Sojourner Truth, and she began to walk again. In slavery time, when words seemed weaker than whips, Sojourner Truth left New York City with a bundle of clothes on one arm and a basket of food on the other. She began to speak out against slavery to whomever would listen. Not everyone wanted to hear, but she had the lever of truth. So she spoke. In Massachusetts, she said, "What a beautiful world this would be when we should see everything right side up." In Ohio, she said that she had seen some of her children sold off into slavery, and when I cried out with a mother's grief, none but Jesus heard. In Indiana, she said, "The truth is powerful and will prevail." In slavery time, when tiredness stood at the doorway, Sojourner Truth walked all the way to Washington, D.C. There she met Abraham Lincoln, and she told him he was the best president who had ever taken the seat. In Michigan, she collected food and clothing for the black regiments of freed men and former slaves fighting in the Civil War to end slavery. In Virginia, she worked with the Freedmen's Bureau to teach liberated slaves how to live in freedom. When some people wanted to stop her, she warned that if they tried, she would rock the United States like a cradle. And in Washington, D.C., when a streetcar conductor would not pull up for her, she cried, "I want to ride," so loudly that the carriage traffic around them stopped, and she got on. The conductor threatened to throw her off, but she told him that she knew the law as well as he did, and she stayed on and rode longer than she had planned to make the most of it. For years and years, Sojourner Truth walked and told her story and fought for freedom. And when slavery time finally ended, she felt so tall. In freedom time, when hope kindled a fire in the dark and happiness winked over the horizon, Sojourner Truth told an audience in Massachusetts, "Children, I have come here like the rest of you to hear what I have to say." And what she had to say was plenty. She spoke of women's right to vote. She spoke about making prisons more humane. She asked the government to offer land to former slaves. She spoke against capital punishment. For almost 15 more years, she walked thousands of miles to Philadelphia and to Brooklyn and to Washington, D.C., and to Kansas, and to Iowa, and to Missouri, and to Wisconsin, and Illinois, and all over Michigan. And everywhere she went, she spoke of freedom. In freedom time, when respect wanted to show its face and broken promises tried to mend, Sojourner Truth walked to Battle Creek, Michigan, where she lived with her free daughters and free grandchildren. And Sojourner Truth was weary and ready to lay down her lever. In freedom time, when chains broke and words got up to sing, and tiredness, oh tiredness, danced hallelujah, Sojourner Truth asked herself, what is anybody in the world for? Then she looked up at those same moon, that same stars, and she saw them shining over everyone. And she knew that she had what she had been in the world for. I had a work to do, she thought, and my lost time that I lost being a slave was made up. And that is the story of Sojourner Truth, So Tall Within, Sojourner Truth's Long Walk to Freedom. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I also hope that you did last week's homework and Googled Juneteenth and learned a little bit about Juneteenth. Juneteenth is actually this Friday, June 19th, and there are plenty of celebrations around our city. And also I would like to shout out Talia, who watched last week's video of our reading, and she said that she really enjoyed this story. So Talia, I hope that you enjoyed the end as well. And until next Wednesday, I will see you guys later. Happy reading.